Okay.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mick Kennedy of Clef Books, and I'm here with John Surowiecki with his wonderful new book, Chez Petrouchka. We're going to be asking him a little bit about this book. It should be coming out very soon. And again, please look for Clef Books and follow us on Twitter and Facebook if you don't mind. And we're so honored to have you here, John. And it's a fascinating book. I just really enjoyed reading it and just had a few questions about the book. But first of all, I wanted to ask you about the first poem that you remember writing. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Well, in high school, I wrote a few poems. It had to do with atomic explosion, so I was a pretty dark-minded young man, I guess. But the first real poem that I wrote, I was a senior at the University of Connecticut, and they had just begun several years before the Wallace Stevens contest, their poetry writing contest. And now it's in its 60th year, I guess. This was back in 1966. And so I decided to enter it, and I wrote this quite long narrative poem called Osiris, I believe it was called, about the Egyptian god and how his entrails are left throughout the Nile. And it was a strange poem, but it won first place, and I was astounded. And I got $50, plus I got there was a ceremony, and I got to shake the hand of John Crow Ransom, the famous poet.
Wow.
And actually not too long before he passed away. So that was my first poem that of any consequence. And I've looked at it, and I can't bear to see it. It is so terrible.
Well, that's pretty interesting. First time out, and you got $50, and back in '66, that was pretty good money.
It bought a lot of beer.
That's what I wanted to hear. All right.
Yeah.
So this is again a fascinating book, and I just wanted you to talk a little bit about how this whole idea came to you. What was it that kind of moved you to write about Petrouchka?
Well, it was always one of my favorite pieces of orchestra work, Stravinsky's Petrouchka. Beautiful music, and there's some historical aspect to it. For instance, there's something known as the Petrouchka chord. I don't know if you're a musician. I think you are, aren't you? You might know what that is. It's a C major and F sharp major played simultaneously or in a rolling chord. And that always intrigued me. And so, but I've been very fond of the piece. But one day I was just going through YouTube, and I like to listen to classical music on YouTube because you can see the musician, and you can see the actual playing. And it was Yuja Wang was playing the piano version of the ballet. And Stravinsky had written it himself, the transcription, but couldn't play it because he didn't have the skills as a pianist. And so he asked Arthur Rubinstein to be to introduce it. I think the New York Philharmonic or Boston, one of the two. And he said, fine. But when I listened to Yuja play it, I was astounded. She was just so spirited and so energetic, and just a magnificent performance. And so that just did it for me. And I wondered, what happens? This is a ballet about a puppet, really, and other characters. But the second part is just about Petrouchka himself. Or itself, and I just focused on that and sort of fit it in between there's the magician and Moore and the ballerina and all these secondary characters, and I've just sort of squished them together and it came out. I think it came out interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. So just giving a puppet a voices was fun. It was a lot of fun to do.
Well, it looks like you had a lot of fun with it. It's a rolling story indeed. Would you like to share a little bit with us?
Sure. I'll read a little bit. I'd like your listeners to realize that Petrouchka never uses the pronoun I. He always calls him, he's the third person or something else, and because he's not a full person, he's not a grown person. And there's also in the narrative there are interruptions by who knows what. I don't explain, but the idea was stolen from James Joyce's Ulysses, where Leopold Bloom goes to the newspaper office, and there are headlines that Joyce inserts every now and then. So I sort of inserted some headlines throughout, and they become really narrative directions essentially. But it's all Petrouchka, and even Stravinsky himself in one of his letters says that his little puppet is kind of an ornery son of a gun, and but he likes him because he's completely honest and forthright. So what I'm going to read is just a page or two from the point where Petrouchka is fully alive now and sentient, but he sees a vision. It's a woman, a girl, a ballerina, who happens to have feet, which he doesn't have. He is a hand puppet, and the ballerina is a full scale marionette, and she has strings coming out of her head, and she has a herky-jerky motion which he finds enthralling. So at first he doesn't like her at all. He thinks she's weird, but then he's completely enthralled by her. Okay. This is always in Petrouchka's voice. She's called beautiful by those who don't know what beauty is. I'm talking about you, adults desperate for loveliness, adoring the rosy smudges of her cheeks, the wet red triangles of her lips, her glass eyes and dowel-punched dimple, waxy skin and brass-spun hair. Makes you stain your pantaloons. But I'm quick to see what a skank she is at heart. Petrouchka sees her off stage, waiting for her cue. Cold, remote, ice puppet. Then I'm looking at something very strange, something unlike anything Petrouchka knows. Ballerina has feet. What the? She has slippers with ribbons, rigid toes. Petrouchka is all curtain down there. She dances on the night. Darkness is her floor. And look up, something more than night sky. Strings grow out of her, gossamer threads. When she dances, it's all over, folks. Herky-jerky extravaganza. Oh, I'm a goner. Petrouchka is dizzy as a drunk. World shifting, sky spinning. Brain races at panic level. Am touched beyond comprehension. She glides, a breeze from the Indies. She leaps and floats, a kite made of moon dust. She turns left, and the world turns left. She pirouettes, and the world spins off its axis. She hangs in the air. Her stuffing turns into gold lame, stitching flawless. She transcends common cloth, free, Empyrean, while a hand continues to reach up Petrouchka's ass. Thank you.
Awesome. That's really awesome.
Yeah, it is kind of fun.
So, how long did it take you to write this book?
Oh, a few months. And then most of the time, it took finding a publisher with, with courage enough to be interested in such a. I mean, the Petrouchka is a nasty son of a gun, and there's really very little appealing about him, which is, I think, what Stravinsky wanted in the original ballet. He's but a lot of people, I had few publishers were very interested, and then then like in a panel of 4 judges say 3 of them loved it and 1 didn't, and so it was canceled. And so thank you, Mick, for being so brave. And I think it's an unusual poem. There's no doubt about it. But I thank you for taking the chance on it.
Well, I just really enjoyed it, and I'm honored that you gave me a chance to publish it. So here's to a long friendship.
Yes.
So again, with Petrouchka, there's kind of a long history with that particular character.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel that this book kind of complements other iterations of that particular character?
Okay. Well, Petrouchka is Russian for not exactly, but Russian for punch. Those puppets, right. Punch and Judy punch, they right. Punch each other. Which so he has a great heritage, an ancient heritage, goes back to Rome, to ancient Rome, and the street theaters there, and each country, it seems, has its own variation, its own kind of punch and Judy. Although here in this one, the Judy becomes the ballerina, and but it's the puppet who suffers, and it ends up in utter darkness. There's the puppet has some aspirations to be human, much like Pinocchio in a way. They become a boy, and Petrouchka become a human being, but he just doesn't. And everything's against him. And in the end, the last chapter is just darkness. The last soliloquy is darkness, and he comes to terms with it in his own way. He just accepts it, and that's just the end of the poem. Mm. There's no soft pedaling at the end.
So you kind of answered another one of my questions that I had, but how does, I hope I don't throw you a curve with this, but how does this align with some of your other poems, books that you've written?
Oh, I see. Well, I think as a writer, I'm kind of schizophrenic. I have like a tender side, a romantic side, or a gentle side at least. But then I have a darker side, which is more fun-loving in a way, a peculiar way, but it's certainly darker. One of my previous books is called Flies, and it's about, it's a narrative epic, semi-epic poem about flies, 8 generations of fly watch this person, a man, die, and they're waiting for him so he's dinner for them.
Oh my.
But it's again the same sort of thing where the history of flies and flies in literature and that sort of thing, and it all sort of is regurgitated up, and it's a book of mine that really has not done very well in terms of buying public. But one day I was at a party, and I was talking to a poet friend of mine, and I said, my flies, I'm so sad about them because nobody's reading them, and they're really a lot of fun if you just jump in a little bit. And she says, no, that's my favorite book that you've written. So I was happy to hear that somebody likes it. And I think a lot of people, this is more accessible, this one. The flies was just very bizarre. But but most of my other work is more human emotions and you know, that sort of thing.
So it definitely has a place in the file of John Surowiecki's Orvere.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's the Hyde part and the Jekyll part just sort of sits in the corner somewhere for a while.
Well, we're glad to have it, and we're looking forward to having a full reading of the work, which I will let everyone know about as soon as I can. And John, thank you so much for spending some time with us today. Again, Chez Petrouchka is coming out soon, and you should get it because it's a really cool ride. Thank you so much, John. I appreciate your time.
My pleasure, Mick.
All right.
See you soon.